Chibi Assassin's Creed by Titania. First installment. Chapter 5. Altaïr ibn Lahad. It had been a freeing feeling to be back in his own body, and then a humiliating one when he had turned back to the smaller form. He had started shouting at Desmond, once again wanting an explanation. He didn't enjoy being small. It made him feel vulnerable. Desmond picked Ezio up, and Altaïr jumped up to sit in his hood. Good thing he did that too, because as they got out of the room, Sean came up from behind Desmond. Altaïr drew his sword and pointed it directly at Sean's nose. Half the day, Altaïr and Ezio learned more English, and Desmond had taken to also speaking in the multi-language they had made up during the night. It drove Sean and Rebecca crazy. Altaïr could see it on them, even if they tried to hide it. They were talking about the apple and what it had done to them, when another woman came into the room. She urged Desmond into a red chair, and Rebecca began working on what Desmond had called a computer, though neither Altaïr nor Ezio actually knew what that meant. The next few days went more or less the same. At night, they would turn back to their original size, and as soon as the sun rose, they would turn back to their smaller forms. While like that, Desmond would sit in the chair while Altaïr and Ezio would either talk or spar. It had become a fun little game of theirs to see how high they could jump. One night, Ezio had had enough and decided to go sit on the roof of the place. So now it was just a half-asleep Desmond. He had slept half the day away because they took a day off from the red chair, but was still, for some reason, tired and a pretty irritated Altaïr. "If you really are so tired, Desmond, just go back to sleep," Altaïr almost spat out. He was getting really annoyed with Desmond. "But that would leave you all alone." "I can't do that," Desmond said, leaning up against Altaïr. They were sitting on the bed. Altaïr sat cross-legged, with Desmond at his left side. "You would still be in the room with me, just not conscious," Altaïr said, this time with a much calmer voice. "I can't. Not to you," Desmond mumbled, closing his eyes. He then sat up, looking completely awake. His cheeks suddenly flashed red and he looked away. "Desmond?" Altaïr tried, but there was only silence from the other man. Sorry. A lot of stuff has been, happening lately." Desmond stammered out, still not looking at Altaïr. "Yeah? What's your story, then?" Altaïr asked, feeling Desmond relax against him once again. And so Desmond told Altaïr about his childhood and how he had ended up with the Templars and then with the Assassins. Altaïr felt warm. A warm feeling he hadn't felt since before the death of his father. No, he had felt it when he had laughed and smiled with Abbas, back when they had still been close friends. Altaïr rested his head on top of Desmond's and closed his eyes, thinking back to when he was the happiest. "Altaïr?" Desmond asked, moving his head to look up at the man. Altaïr lifted his head to look down at Desmond. And then Desmond did something that Altaïr could not have predicted, not in a million years. Desmond's head shot up, and the man placed his lips on Altaïr's. Desmond had his eyes pinched shut, while Altaïr's were wide in surprise. Desmond pulled away and left some distance between himself and Altaïr. From the door, Ezio made a soft whistle and walked towards the bed. "If Desmond can steal a kiss, so can I," the Italian smiled, walking closer to Altaïr. "No," Altaïr growled at Ezio, but Ezio didn't seem to care what he said, because a moment later Ezio was lifting up Altaïr's head, bent down a little, and placed a kiss on Altaïr's lips. And just then they both turned into their smaller forms, and Altaïr was not afraid to try and slash at Ezio with his mini sword. Desmond, with a full face of red, just started laughing at them, which only made Altaïr even more angry at Ezio. For the rest of the day, Altaïr sat in a corner, glaring at Ezio and Desmond. Desmond was once again in the red chair, the animus they kept calling it, and Ezio was asleep on Desmond's lap. Sean had left some carrots with Altaïr. Why he had done so, Altaïr didn't know. Not that he minded anyway. They tasted good, and it was something to eat while he waited for Desmond to get out of the animus.